An unexpected encounter. The cold expanse of deep space was once the uncharted dominion of the Carey Empire, an ancient civilization that had long mastered the stars. Their warships, colossal and sleek, glided through the void like predatory creatures, imposing and lethal. The Eternal Dominion, a mighty Carey battleship, was the pride of their fleet. Its obsidian hull absorbed the light of distant stars, making it nearly invisible against the endless dark backdrop. Commander Zix stood at the heart of the command bridge, his crystalline exoskeleton shimmering in the soft blue glow of the control panels. The quiet hum of the ship's advanced systems filled the air, their precision and power unmatched across the galaxy. Zix had been trained for millennia to deal with lesser species, those who cowered before the Carey might, those who would tremble at the sight of their warships. It was with this confidence that he surveyed the display before him. 3 tiny human vessels, floating aimlessly near a cluster of asteroids in Carey space. His scouts had reported them as insignificant mining crafts, a nuisance at worst. But Zix knew better than to underestimate any species. "Approach them and initiate contact," Zix ordered, his voice cold and calculated. His tactical officer obeyed immediately, sending a clear and firm message to the humans. "This is Commander Zix of the Carey Empire," he began, his mandibles clicking slightly with each word. "You have entered restricted Imperial space. Power down your systems and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Zix's sharp gaze remained fixed on the viewport, watching the human ships closely. The crew held their breath, awaiting the inevitable reply. But what came next was far from what they expected. A burst of laughter crackled over the comms. It was a deep, genuine sound, filled with amusement. Zix's antennae flickered in confusion as he leaned in closer, wondering if his sensors were malfunctioning. "Oh man, I'm sorry," a voice replied, still laughing. "It's just, you should see how you look right now." All dramatic with the black ship and the booming voice. "Hold on, let me get my camera." Zix froze, his thoughts grinding to a halt. Laughter. The humans had heard his commanding message, but instead of fear or submission, they were mocking him. A primitive species, undoubtedly inferior, was laughing at the might of the Carey Empire. This was unheard of. "Are you mocking me, human?" Zix growled, his voice rising with authority. He looked to his officers for support, but they too were uncertain. The situation was unraveling in a way no Carey officer had ever encountered. "Oh no, no," the human voice replied, the laughter now replaced with a tone of feigned seriousness. "We're just admiring the look. You know, for a ship that's supposed to intimidate, you might want to rethink that black and silver thing. It's a little over the top." Zix's mandibles clicked in frustration. He had expected defiance, but this was a challenge to his very authority. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the human voice interrupted once more. "Anyway, while we're at it," the voice continued with an air of casual nonchalance, "your ship's targeting systems are using quantum-locked particles for guidance. Really neat tech, old but neat. Thing is, we've been playing with quantum fields for quite a while now. Watch this." Without warning, the human ships flickered on Zix's sensor displays, as though they had suddenly shifted positions. His tactical officer's console beeped in alarm. "Commander," the officer chittered nervously, "our targeting systems. They're dancing." Zix's eyes narrowed as the tactical display flashed with seemingly impossible patterns, smiling faces, swirling trajectories. The weapon locks on his ships were no longer targeting the human vessels. Instead, they seemed to form playful shapes and intricate curves, completely out of control. "What is this sorcery?" Zix demanded, his voice rising with disbelief. "Not sorcery," came the calm reply from the human captain. "Just physics. You see, we've been studying quantum foam manipulation for a while. It's a bit like, well, you probably don't want to know. But trust me, we've got it under control." No need to fire your weapons, though. We're just here to chat. Zix's tactical officer shook his head in disbelief. The humans, they've somehow hacked our targeting system. How is that even possible? Commander Zix stood in stunned silence. He had been taught that the Carry were the pinnacle of scientific advancement, that no species could match their power or their technological might. Yet here, in the void of space, a few human mining vessels had not only survived their first contact with the Empire, they had outwitted the Carry with a weapon far more powerful than any starship or laser cannon. Their intellect. We can't allow this to continue, Zix muttered, but his words lacked conviction. These humans, who were supposed to be mere miners, were no longer the underdogs. They had shown themselves to be something far more dangerous, a species whose curiosity and creativity could challenge the very laws of the universe itself. Okay, the human captain's voice cut through his thoughts. I promise, we're not here to be a nuisance. But if you want to take a look at something that'll really make your day, we found some crystals in the asteroid field that could revolutionize your tech. Want to come check it out? You're gonna love it. I'll even brew you some quantum coffee while we talk. Zix's thoughts raced. This was not how he had envisioned this encounter. The Carry had dealt with countless species before, subjugated them, annihilated them, bent them to the Empire's will. But these humans, they were different. Instead of cowering before him, they invited him to share in their knowledge. Instead of fearing the Carry worship, they were treating it as though it were just another visitor to their backyard. He swallowed hard, the weight of his position pressing against him. We will see your crystals, he said slowly, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. But this is for security purposes only. Of course, the human captain replied. And by the way, I'll get that coffee started. You might want to take a deep breath, though. This is going to be an interesting conversation. As Zix and his crew reluctantly prepared to meet the humans, he realized that this first contact would not go as planned. The Carry Empire had never faced an adversary like this, a species whose weapon was not fear or firepower, but laughter, curiosity, and a boundless drive to understand the universe around them. The stage was set for a clash unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The unraveling of power. The eternal dominion loomed in space like a dark titan, its obsidian hull gleaming with an eerie silent menace. Its weapon systems, once a symbol of the Empire's unrivaled superiority, now lay in chaos, mocking the very idea of power. Commander Zix stood rigidly in his command chair, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting the lights of the bridge in sharp angles, but his mind was a storm of confusion. The human mining vessels, which he had assumed to be primitive, had turned his meticulously calculated tactical plan into a mockery. They're still not responding to our threats, Zix muttered, his voice edged with frustration. This is preposterous. His tactical officer, a Carry with the name Tizol, clicked nervously, glancing at the data screens. The human ships, though smaller and seemingly outdated, had somehow rendered his weapon systems useless. The Carry's most trusted technology, the quantum lock particle guidance system, designed to lock onto any target with pinpoint precision, was now a mere plaything in the hands of these strange humans. Commander, Tizol spoke, a tone of unease lacing her voice. Their ships, they're shifting in ways that shouldn't be possible. The quantum locks, they're fluctuating, almost as if they're mocking us. Zix stared at the screen, watching in disbelief as the targeting patterns drawn by the Eternal Dominion's weapons began to spiral in chaotic arcs. Instead of focusing on the human vessels, the locks began to form improbable shapes, smiley faces, spirals, and curves that defied any known logic. What kind of trickery is this? Zix snapped, gripping his chair's armrests so tightly his knuckles glowed. We've studied quantum theory for eons. How can they? Before he could finish, the human voice crackled across the comm once more, its carefree tone an almost tangible mockery of Zix's growing fury. "Hey, Commander," the human captain said brightly, her voice brimming with an irritating casualness. "I hope you're not too upset about those weapons locks. We didn't mean to mess with your systems, but we noticed a little problem. You see, your targeting tech is old. You've got quantum lock particles guiding everything, but those locks are bound by a rigid structure. We've been working with quantum foam manipulation, kind of like breaking down that structure into something more flexible." Zix's antennae flickered. He had heard of quantum foam manipulation in theory. It was the stuff of advanced experimental science, something even the Carey Empire hadn't fully mastered. To hear a human speak of it so nonchalantly was a slap in the face to the centuries of Carey intellectual supremacy. "Impossible," Zix hissed, barely containing his rising panic. "This is absurd. We are the empire of the stars. No species has ever dared to outthink us." "I'm not saying we outthink you," the human captain responded, still laughing lightly. "I'm just saying we think differently. And, we're kind of used to improvising." Zix's mind raced. He had studied humanity. Their record of technological advancement, though impressive in some respects, had always been tempered by their chaotic and unpredictable nature. They were primitive in many ways, their greatest achievements limited to their ability to adapt, not their brute force or cutting-edge science. But what he was witnessing now was beyond comprehension. These humans had taken his superior technology and not only neutralized it but bent it to their will. How could this be? "Send a fleet-wide message," Zix barked, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Tell all stations to prepare for countermeasures." As his command staff scrambled to execute his orders, Zix's eyes fixed on the screen. The human ships were still there, just out of reach of his now malfunctioning targeting systems. He could feel his empire's carefully constructed illusion of invincibility crumbling beneath him. Meanwhile, Captain Chen's voice came through once more, as casual as ever. "By the way, we noticed your power systems are fluctuating. You might want to check your port manifold. If you don't stabilize it soon, it could cascade into a pretty catastrophic failure." Zix's stomach clenched. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "Your sensors don't even have access to our internal systems." "Oh, we've been tracking your emissions for a while," Chen replied, as if it were no big deal. "And we've noticed something off with your power conduits. Let me send you our analysis. You're going to need it unless you want to spend the next few hours in a plasma storm." For a brief moment, Zix felt as though the universe itself had become a cruel joke. These humans, who were supposed to be nothing more than a nuisance, were dismantling his entire fleet's superiority, one revelation at a time. "No," Zix growled, his mind struggling to maintain control. "This cannot be happening. I will not be made a fool of by mere minors." But as he attempted to ignore the growing sense of helplessness, his science officer spoke up, a note of terror in her voice. "Commander, the human calculations, they're correct. Our systems are failing. If we don't make immediate adjustments, we'll experience a critical failure within the hour." Zix's mind reeled. The humans had not only hacked his weapons systems, but were now pinpointing internal vulnerabilities, flaws that even his most experienced engineers had missed. How had they done it? "Captain Chen," Zix said through clenched mandibles, his voice taut with frustration. "How is it possible that you know our systems so intimately?" "Well," came the reply, "we do like to learn how things work. It's kind of our thing. But hey, let's focus on the important stuff, shall we? We've also found some fascinating minerals out in the asteroid field. I'll send you the coordinates." Zix felt a bitter taste in his mouth. The humans had successfully disarmed him, not with weapons, but with their overwhelming curiosity and innovative thinking. They had turned the tables on him, forcing him to rely on their expertise to save his ship from catastrophic failure. He inhaled sharply, realizing just how much he underestimated the humans. They weren't just miners. They were explorers, inventors, and thinkers, capable of understanding the very fabric of the universe in ways even the mighty Carey Empire could not. For the first time in his long career, Zix found himself questioning everything. He was no longer the hunter. He was the prey. And it was the humans who held the keys to his survival. This is not over, Zix muttered to himself, though even as he spoke, doubt crept into his voice. Of course not, came Captain Chen's easy response. We'll get to that mineral field after you fix your power conduit. Trust me, it's worth the trouble. Zix could only stare at the screen, knowing that the next move he made would shape the future of the Carey Empire. The humans had thrown down the gauntlet, and it was time to see if the Carey could rise to meet them, or if they would continue to be outsmarted by a species that believed in the impossible. The Great Reveal. The Eternal Dominion drifted silently in the depths of space, its once unshakable confidence now crumbling like dust in the void. Commander Zix paced the command bridge, his crystalline exoskeleton glowing faintly under the harsh lights. Every step echoed in the quiet, a reminder of the uneasy tension that gripped the ship. The humans had not only undermined his weapon systems, but had also exposed vulnerabilities within his ship that even the most seasoned engineers had missed. Yet, despite all of this, he had no choice but to accept their help, their guidance. The sting of humiliation burned in his mind. Commander, we've received the calculations from Captain Chen. Tisal, his tactical officer, reported nervously, glancing at the incoming data. She's right. If we don't adjust the manifold soon, the cascade will reach critical levels. Zix growled under his breath, his mandibles clicking in irritation. He had been raised to believe that the Carey Empire was unstoppable, that no species could challenge their might, especially not a bunch of resource-mining humans. And yet, here he was, reliant on their mercy. Fine, Zix said finally, his voice cold. Initiate the adjustments, and make sure their coordinates are accurate. As the ship's engineering crew scrambled to apply the necessary fixes, Zix couldn't shake the nagging thought at the back of his mind. These humans, they had shown him a vulnerability, not just in his ship's systems, but in the very idea of the Carey Empire itself. How could they have learned so much about Carey technology in such a short time? What other secrets were they hiding? The hum of the ship's engines, once a reassuring sound of power and control, now felt distant, almost hollow. Zix's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice crackling over the communications channel, so casual it almost seemed condescending. "Hey, Zix," Captain Chen said, her tone light and breezy. "Just wanted to check in. You're doing great with those adjustments. You should be good to go now." Zix stiffened. "You're not here to gloat, human," he snapped, trying to keep his composure. But his words lacked the conviction they once had. His authority had been eroded, piece by piece, and the humans, these supposed simple miners, had chipped away at his pride more effectively than any weapon ever could. "Not gloating, Commander," she replied. "Just making sure we don't end up in a bad situation. Like, a ship explosion. Not really my thing." Zix couldn't help but bristle at her casual tone, but there was an underlying respect in her words. In some strange way, it was as if they were equals, no longer hunter and prey, but two players in a game that neither fully understood. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to calm down. "What is it that you want, human? You've already shown us that we've underestimated you. Is there anything more you intend to reveal?" A soft chuckle came from the other end of the line. "Reveal? Oh no, it's more like, let's say we're just getting started. You've seen a little bit of what we can do, but what we're really after is something more transformative." Zix frowned, his antennae flickering in confusion. "Transformative? What do you mean?" "You see," Chen began, her voice now taking on a more serious tone. "While we were working on stabilizing your power systems, we discovered something you might want to know. We found some mineral formations in the asteroid field nearby. They're unlike anything you've seen before, and trust me, we've been around the galaxy a few times. This stuff, these crystals, they have properties that could revolutionize your entire empire. Your energy systems, your weapons, your entire infrastructure could be enhanced in ways you never imagined. Zix's mind raced. Crystals. The Carey Empire had always prided itself on its advanced crystalline technology, the foundation of their starships, their weaponry, and their power systems. The idea that these humans had stumbled upon something that could surpass what the Carey had spent centuries perfecting was unfathomable. But here they were, offering it freely. What kind of properties are we talking about? Zix asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Chen's response was measured, but Zix could hear the excitement building in her words. We're talking about energy efficiency, Commander. Your entire fleet runs on energy-dense crystals, but what we found could improve the efficiency by orders of magnitude. It could change everything. Your power grids, your weapon systems, your ships. You could expand your fleet, double your reach, and reduce energy costs at the same time. These crystals don't just store energy. They manipulate it. We've been able to observe their quantum behavior, and let me tell you, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. Zix felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of what Captain Chen was suggesting were staggering. The Carey had long believed themselves to be the masters of energy manipulation, their crystalline technologies the cornerstone of their dominance. And now, these humans, with their crude mining ships, had found a way to make it all obsolete. How do you know all this? Zix asked, his voice betraying a hint of awe. We've been studying the asteroid field for months, Chen explained. The minerals we found have some extraordinary quantum properties. But you know, it's not just about mining them. It's about understanding the underlying principles. These crystals operate on a level that even we didn't fully comprehend until we started digging into it. Zix was silent for a long moment. Everything he had known, everything the Carey Empire had built, seemed so small in comparison to what these humans were offering. He had always believed that the key to power was control. Control over space, control over technology, control over others. But now, standing at the crossroads of a new kind of power, Zix realized that perhaps the true key to dominance was not control, but collaboration. The humans had not come here to conquer. They had come to share, to teach, to open doors the Carey had long closed. But would Zix and his people be willing to listen, or would their arrogance and centuries of empire building blind them to the opportunity before them? Let me see these crystals, Zix said slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. Show me what you found. If it's as valuable as you say, I will consider your offer. Of course, Commander, Chen replied, her voice full of warmth. We'll send you the coordinates. It's up to you now, Zix. What happens next is in your hands. Zix stood at the edge of the bridge, staring out into the infinite void. The fate of the Carey Empire, of his people, seemed more uncertain now than ever before. Would he cling to his empire's legacy of isolation and superiority, or would he take a leap of faith and embrace a new era of cooperation, a new path forged by the ingenuity and creativity of these unexpected human allies? For the first time in centuries, Zix wasn't sure. But as the first rays of light from the distant sun bathed the eternal dominion, he knew one thing for certain. The future had just begun. The path forward. The silence on the eternal dominion was deafening. Commander Zix stood in the center of the bridge, surrounded by his officers, but all of them were lost in their own thoughts. They had just received the coordinates to the human mining site, where the mysterious crystals were waiting to be explored. The weight of the decision before him pressed heavily on Zix's mind. The Carey Empire had always ruled through fear and absolute control. The very idea of working alongside another species, let alone these humans, was foreign to him. Yet the more he thought about the human captain's offer, the more he realized that it was an opportunity they could not afford to ignore. Commander Tizal, his tactical officer, spoke up, her voice cautious. Are we really going to trust them? These humans, what if this is all some kind of trick? We are not accustomed to sharing our knowledge. We are the masters of this galaxy." Zix turned slowly to face her. He could see the unease in her eyes, the uncertainty that had taken root in the hearts of his crew. After centuries of dominance, the Carey were not accustomed to having their superiority questioned. But something had changed. The events of the past hours had shown him that humans, despite their outwardly primitive technology, possessed something far more dangerous than advanced weaponry: creativity, adaptability, and an unshakable determination. "I don't know," Zix replied, his voice softer than usual. "But what I do know is this. The Carey Empire's way of doing things, our rigid control, our way of dominating everything we encounter, it's starting to fall apart. We've seen it with these humans. They think differently, and maybe that's the key we've been missing." Cell's mandibles clicked in frustration. "And what about our legacy? Our pride?" Zix felt a pang of doubt. It was true. The Carey had built an empire that spanned entire star systems. They had ruled with precision, with technology that few could rival. But in doing so, they had isolated themselves from the universe, closing themselves off from new ideas, new possibilities. "I don't know if our pride matters anymore," Zix said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's time for something new, for something better." The tactical officer hesitated before bowing her head in agreement. "As you command, Commander." The decision was made. Zix ordered the fleet to prepare for the journey to the asteroid field, where the human ships had made their incredible discovery. The crew moved with precision, their training taking over as they made the necessary adjustments to the Eternal Dominion's course. But despite the outward calm, Zix could sense the tension among his officers. They were stepping into unknown territory, territory where they would not have the upper hand, where they might even need to rely on those they had once considered beneath them. Meanwhile, on the human mining vessels, Captain Sarah Chen and her crew were preparing for the Carey's arrival. From her vantage point, it felt almost surreal. They had started this encounter as a group of curious miners, exploring the far reaches of space for valuable minerals. But now, they were on the verge of sharing a discovery that could change a new horizon. The vastness of space stretched infinitely before the Eternal Dominion as it hovered just outside the asteroid field. Zix's gaze remained locked on the strange, shimmering crystal projected before him. The human captain, Sarah Chen, stood calmly beside the display, her arms crossed with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were offering. For a moment, Zix felt as though he were no longer on the bridge of a warship, but instead at the threshold of a vast new frontier, one that he had never even considered. He had spent so much of his life surrounded by the cold, rigid certainty of Carey tradition, and yet here he was, unsure of what the next step would bring. "What is it about this crystal that makes it so special?" Zix asked, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity. It was a question he had been wrestling with ever since he saw the first flash of the crystal's energy. It pulsed with a rhythm he didn't understand, a pattern that defied every law of Carey physics that he knew. It was alive, almost, as though it carried within it the potential to change the very fabric of reality itself. Captain Chen smiled, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "This is not just a crystal, Commander. It's a new form of energy, one that we've only begun to scratch the surface of. You see, this crystal behaves in ways that are completely unpredictable, even to us. It interacts with quantum fields in ways no other material can, shifting between states with an almost organic fluidity. Its energy doesn't just power systems, it reshapes them. It's not about harnessing energy in the traditional sense, but about manipulating the very nature of energy itself." Zix's antennae twitched in surprise. The concept was so foreign, so far beyond anything the Carey had ever attempted, that it felt like staring into a void. How could something so simple, so raw, hold the potential to break every boundary the Carey Empire had established in its quest for power? "But how can we be sure this isn't some sort of trap?" Zix asked. "You say it changes everything, but what if there are risks?" What if we don't understand its full potential? Chen's smile softened. I understand your concern, Commander. You've seen too many dangers in the universe to take risks lightly. But that's exactly why we've been studying it for so long. We've been careful. We know its potential, and we've only shared the very beginning with you. But the truth is, the more we learn about it, the more we believe that this crystal could unlock the next stage of energy manipulation. Not just for weapons or ships, but for entire ecosystems, entire worlds. We could end scarcity, eliminate energy conflicts, and give every species access to unlimited, sustainable power. Zix stood frozen, his mind racing. The Carey Empire had always prided itself on its dominance over energy. Their crystalline technologies were the backbone of their civilization. But here, before him, was something that could shatter that monopoly. This wasn't just about power, it was about a fundamental shift in how the galaxy could operate. Could the Carey afford to take this leap? Or would their pride destroy any chance of progress? Imagine, Commander, Chen continued, a universe where energy is no longer a commodity, but a freely available resource. A universe where every civilization, every species, has the potential to grow, to evolve, without the constraints of resource scarcity. This crystal is just the key to unlocking that potential. Zix's mind flickered back to the long, dark years of conquest, of endless battles for resources, for dominance, for control. He had spent so much of his life building the Carey Empire, expanding its reach, and yet now, here was something that could render all of that obsolete. Was this the future the Carey were meant to have, or would they remain chained to the past? The tension in the air was palpable. Zix's officers stood in silence, awaiting their commander's decision. They had seen the evidence of the crystal's potential. They had witnessed its power firsthand. But the question remained, was the Carey Empire ready to embrace such a radical change? Zix glanced over at Captain Chen, his eyes searching her face for any hint of deception. But there was none. She was earnest, driven by a vision that extended far beyond personal gain. For the first time, Zix realized that this wasn't just a scientific discovery. It was a philosophy. It was a belief that the universe could be more than it was, more than the Carey Empire had ever allowed it to be. We've spent so much time thinking that power means control, Zix finally said, his voice heavy with thought. That we could force the universe to bend to our will, using fear, using technology, using strength. But what if this? He gestured to the crystal. What if this is the key to true power? What if we've been looking at it all wrong? Captain Chen's eyes gleamed with understanding. That's exactly what we've learned, Commander. It's not about dominating energy or resources. It's about understanding them, about using them in ways that benefit everyone, not just a select few. The Carey Empire doesn't have to fall, Commander. You can still be the leaders of this galaxy, just not by imposing your will on others, but by creating a future where every species has the chance to thrive. Zix's thoughts swirled in a storm of possibilities. The Carey had always been the dominant force in the galaxy, feared, respected, and never questioned. But what if their future wasn't in conquest? What if it lay in cooperation, in mutual growth? For the first time in his life, Zix questioned the very foundation of his empire. And as the weight of that realization settled in, he knew that the decision before him would change everything. I need time, he said at last, his voice soft but firm. Time to think. To understand the full scope of what you're offering. Captain Chen nodded, her expression unchanging. Of course, Commander. But remember, the choice is yours. The future is always shaped by the decisions we make today. Zix nodded in return, his mind already racing toward the unknown. The eternal dominion loomed in the distance, but for the first time, Zix was not certain of the path ahead. The future of the Carey Empire, and perhaps the entire galaxy, was now in his hands. As the Carey warship drifted silently toward the asteroid field, Zix understood one thing. No matter what decision he made, nothing would ever be the same again. A choice for the ages. The hum of the Eternal Dominion's engines reverberated through the cold void of space, but inside, the bridge was filled with a strange, almost unbearable quiet. Zix had requested time to consider the human's offer, but with every passing hour, the weight of his decision grew heavier. He stood at the viewport, staring out into the darkness, his thoughts consumed by the offer Captain Chen had made. It was an opportunity unlike any he had ever encountered, an invitation to reshape everything the Carey Empire had stood for. For centuries, the Carey Empire had ruled the stars with an iron fist. Their technology, their power, their crystalline energy systems had made them the undisputed rulers of this galaxy. To accept the human's proposal, to share knowledge, to cooperate, would mean giving up control. It would mean abandoning the old ways of conquest and dominance in favor of something new, something unknown. And yet, the more Zix thought about it, the more the old ways seemed hollow. He had watched countless civilizations bow before the might of the Empire, their worlds subjugated, their resources drained. But now, in the face of the human discovery, all that felt irrelevant. The Carey Empire had always feared that their power would be challenged. But the humans weren't challenging them with weapons or armies. They were challenging them with ideas, with a philosophy that questioned the very nature of power. What if true strength didn't lie in domination? What if it lay in understanding, in sharing, in collaboration? "Commander," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Tijal, his tactical officer. "The human vessels have sent a follow-up transmission. They're awaiting your response." Zix turned slowly, his mind racing. "Very well. Let them in." Moments later, the screen on the bridge flickered to life. And once again, Captain Chen's calm face appeared. She looked the same as ever. Confident, composed, but there was an energy in her eyes, a spark of something far greater than just curiosity or ambition. There was a vision, one that she believed in with all her heart. "Commander Zix," she greeted him, her voice as steady as ever. "I know you've been thinking it over, and I just wanted to let you know. We're ready. We're not in a rush. But when you're ready to join us, to take the next step forward, we'll be here. No pressure." Zix's gaze lingered on her face, and for a brief moment, he saw not a mere human captain, but a leader in her own right. Someone who was charting a course for a future far beyond the one he had ever envisioned for himself or his people. "I appreciate your patience, Captain," Zix replied, his voice steady, though the uncertainty still lingered. "But you must understand, this is not just about us. This is about everything we've ever believed. Our empire, our way of life, the foundation of everything we've done." Chen nodded. "I get it, Commander. I truly do. This is a big step, and I'm not asking you to take it lightly. But think about it. Think about the galaxy. About what we could achieve together. We're not here to overthrow your empire. We're not here to weaken you. We're here to show you that we can do more than just survive. We can thrive together." Zix's antennae twitched as he absorbed her words. Her tone was not one of coercion, but of quiet certainty. She wasn't pleading for him to accept. She was simply offering a new path, a path that didn't involve fear or submission, but the promise of something more. "I've spent my entire life building an empire, Captain," Zix said slowly, his voice almost thoughtful. "But in the end, what is an empire if it crumbles under the weight of its own pride? What is power if it cannot evolve, if it cannot adapt?" Chen's eyes softened. "Exactly. That's why we're here. We're offering you the chance to adapt, to be something greater than you've ever been before. You don't have to give up who you are, Commander. Just change the way you see the universe. Imagine a future where the Carey Empire is a leader, not by fear, but by example, where your technology, your knowledge, helps other species rise, not fall." Zix looked out into the void once more, the weight of his thoughts pressing heavily upon him. The galaxy stretched out before him, endless and full of possibility. The future was unwritten, But the choice before him was clear. Continue down the path of imperial dominance, hoarding knowledge, keeping it for the select few, or take the first step into a new era, one built on the promise of mutual growth, exploration, and respect. I've spent years, decades, building walls around what we know, Zix murmured, almost to himself. I've built walls between us and the rest of the galaxy. But what if these walls are only keeping us from seeing something more, something beyond our own understanding? There was a long pause as the weight of Zix's words hung in the air. The bridge was quiet, the officers around him sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Tizal, ever the skeptic, stood by silently, but even she seemed to be waiting for the moment of decision. Finally, Zix straightened his back, his crystalline form glowing faintly as he made his decision. "Captain Chin," he said, his voice firm yet tinged with something new, something uncertain but hopeful. "I believe it's time for the Carey Empire to learn something new. It's time to let go of the old ways. We will join you. Together, we will explore this new future." Chin's face broke into a smile, not of triumph, but of quiet understanding. "Thank you, Commander Zix. You've made the right choice." The moment Zix spoke those words, the entire trajectory of the Carey Empire shifted. No longer would they seek to dominate the galaxy. No longer would they hoard knowledge and technology for themselves. They would step into the unknown, not as conquerors, but as partners. Together with the humans, they would work to build something that had never existed before. An alliance where ideas, not weapons, would define strength. For the first time in his life, Zix felt as though he had taken a true step into the future, not as a ruler, but as a learner, a collaborator, and perhaps most surprisingly, a partner in the universe's great journey. The stars outside his ship glowed a little brighter, a little more hopeful. The Carey Empire had been born in darkness, but perhaps, just perhaps, they were now ready to step into the light.